Good evening once again, lovelies of YouTube. This is Jacob K. Baker for Atomic Stick Figure Productions, and now it's time for me to get around to my review for the fan film Godzilla Battle Royale. Before I get into my plot synopsis and final thoughts, let's get into the background of the film. See, originally this started out 4 or 5 years ago. I can't remember exactly how long ago it was, as this short film made by the Dojo Studios crew, which is this group of people who work at G-Fest to create these fan films, and they show these fan films at G-Fest, and then they even pop up on YouTube. I can't remember the channel, but they're there. So just look up G-Fantas, and it'll lead you right to the actual videos, and then even the behind the scenes stuff that Onlookers had filmed as well. Uh, but yeah, it started out as G-Fantas Worlds Collide, and Billy DeBose, he took the basic idea and expanded upon it to make this feature-length Godzilla fan film. And where do I go from here? I mean, this film was 4 years in the making. I mean, Billy actually spent 4 years writing and editing and doing the special effects work, and even made his own costumes. And I mean, the man's a genius. He's like the modern day Burt I. Gordon. For those of you who actually know who Burt I. Gordon is, and if you're listening to my channel, then odds are you do. But yeah, so 4 years in the making of his own time and money, filming footage for this film at G-Fest by people with costumes who are kind enough to lend their time and their talents to filming the monster sequences. And then he even went to different people's houses to film their costumes, like Jeff Magnuson's Mechagodzilla, that is the same one that appeared on the episode of 30 Rock. And then he even came by my house to film a bunch of stuff with the Varan and the Hypergodzilla and a bunch of the other stuff that we did. And yeah, so he just went around to all these people's houses, filmed, filmed their acting sequences, and then, like I said, he spent 4 years just piecing everything together until we have the final product, which is Godzilla Battle Royale. Now, this is going to be a spoiler-free review because the film hasn't been released to the interwebs yet. So not a lot of people have seen this outside of the people who got to see it at G-Fest. So for those of you that haven't seen it yet and are patiently waiting for the film to come out, or impatiently, because I know some of you are like really, really wanting to see this, I will forego giving away any spoilers whatsoever. So with that out of the way, I think we should move on to my actual plot synopsis for the film. Now, me reading this, you're going to tell a decided difference between me actually just talking and then me reading, because the way I talk is very, very different. But at any rate, this is a big review that I wrote for the film that I posted on Facebook, not only my page, but the Godzilla Battle Royale like page. And for those of you that are interested in it and haven't found the like page yet, there will be a link in the description. So yeah, just feel free to check it out and be sure to like the page. But anyway, let's go into my very, very strange and in-depth synopsis of this movie. So let's begin, shall we? It was a dark and stormy night, and the killer crept slowly through the hallways of a decrepit mausoleum. Oh, no, wait. That's the wrong movie. Oh, yeah, now I remember. The film starts up with a great montage of Chicago, showing various sights in the Windy City. Then the audience is introduced to a couple on a pier. The young lad, going old school, proposes to his girlfriend, but before things can get too romantic, the peaceful scene is quickly disturbed when a laser beam blasts the water before them. Watching in awe, the couple is blanketed in the shadow of a very familiar silhouette and the single most iconic roar in movie history. Due to the incredibly catchy opening credit sequence featuring featuring many of the film's monsters. And most importantly, magma! Well, maybe not the most important, but come on, dude's not been on the big screen since Gorath, and that was over 50 years ago. Yeah, I know, he's just a big walrus, right? Right? Wrong! He's a leopard seal and the best thing to ever come out of Toho. Well, besides Matango, but still. Wow, that got off topic. After the credit sequence, we get a nice montage of various kaiju attacking Chicago. Ebera, Gazora, Manda, Angulus, Varan, Zilla, and of course the Big G himself. After some gratuitous destruction, we get the first shots of our main star, Matt Razor Shark Kennedy, played by none other than Billy DeBose, and his boss, Commander Amanda Lexington, played by Sarah Breidenbach. It is here where we get a brief summary of events from the Showa-era films and Destroy All Monsters, which this film is a direct sequel to. After going over what's going on, we then swing back to the kaiju action for a bit, and the outcome of taking on Godzilla with a Chicago typewriter. Thompson submachine gun, for those of you unfamiliar with the old school vernacular. Hint, it doesn't exactly go too well for a good buddy Linnell Bridges. Then we swing by an aircraft hangar where Commander Lexington introduces Matt to the experimental superplane, the X-Rider, which he will be piloting in an effort to take down the kaiju menace. Now I scroll down. There's the rest of my review. After sending Matt on his way, Commander Lexington then goes to HQ where we're introduced to Braddock, played by Aaron Heminger, and Madison, played by Jessie Heminger, his wife. Orders are given to intercept the kaiju, and the military steps up, taking on the kaiju with tanks, jets, helicopters, and maser tanks, and the biggest threat to monsters everywhere, the Kaiju Brothers. I lost my spot. Give me a second. Okay, here we go. After the effort to hold back the monsters proves less than effective, Commander Lexington gets a video call from Captain Kumi Wakabayashi, played by Olivia Wolniak. I so hope I pronounced your name correctly. Who explains that a handful of kaiju from Monster Island just vanished. After hearing about what's been going down in Chicago, Kumi explains that they are sending a newly built Mechagodzilla 3 to help with the situation. Here we get a rundown on how Mechagodzilla got built and a nice weapons display, where we get to see an earlier battle between Mechagodzilla 3 and Magma! Most awesome kaiju ever! Well, probably would be if he didn't get run off like a 3-year-old who got his ice cream spilt by a much older bully. Anywho, it is here where we get the first shots of Yuki, played by James Saison, pilot for Mechagodzilla 3, who takes off for America. Back in Chicago, Matt and the X-Rider are on their way into the heart of the city when suddenly, leprechauns. Leprechauns everywhere. Nah, it's just the Shobijin fairies. Cosmos. Elias? Peanuts. The Mothra fairies. Both of whom are played by Jeanette Aquino, and they're voiced by Sarah Breidenbach. Here, the Shobijin explain that not all is as it seems, and that the kaiju are not the major threat that everyone is led to believe, and that Mothra and G-Fantas are both on their way to help the situation out. Then, after giving a cryptic message, like the Mothra fairies always do, they pop off. After checking back in with Commander Lexington, Matt takes off in the X-Rider, and he and the military start putting a hurt on the kaiju. But none so much as Agent M11, played by Robert Scott Field, who totally pwns Ibra with his elite skills. Yeah, I feel ashamed for writing it like that, but hey, it's not often I get to use compy jargon, so I'm going to roll with it. Plus, this guy was an android in Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, so I think I get a free pass on this one. Back at the ranch, Matt takes on Godzilla one-on-one and uses the X-Rider's fire mirror to blast Godzilla with his own weapon before getting knocked for a loop. Fortunately, Yuki and MG3 are there to save his bacon, and Mecha G starts taking names and busting heads. I'm going for a medal and multiple decade verbiage in this synopsis, apparently. Which is odd because I have difficulty talking, if you haven't noticed. See, at this point, Mothra and G-Fantas make their promised appearances and start in on the fray as well. During the carnage, Matt notices something is up with the kaiju and switches his view screens to infrared, where he discovers a lone alien spaceship, much to the delight of Braddock. Commander Lexington attempts to make contact with the craft and is met with the visage of Queen Exatius. Say that 3 times fast, I dare ya. After a bit of dialogue, the ship's control dish gets blasted by Matt, and we get to meet the Queen's token henchman, Zargile, played by John Golden. With the dish disabled, Commander Lexington tells the Space Queen to get off of Earth, but Exatius has a fallback plan. What's that plan? Take control of Mechagodzilla 3 and unleash a bunch of other monsters. Gigan, Hedorah, and Zombie Kong to duke it out with the other kaiju. During the new slugfest, the X-Rider gets shot out of the air and Matt is forced to crash land on a building rooftop. On the spaceship, Exatius orders Zargile to drop the Hedorah slugs to take out the human army. Here we get a nice little homage to not only Resident Evil, but also the soldier versus monster portions of Godzilla vs. Destroyer and Gamera vs. Legion. After a brief tussle with the slugs, Matt gets rescued by the Shobijin and gets a newfound resolve to take on the Kaiju Menace. Unhappy with the way things are going, Exatius orders that all the monsters be released and Zigra, Orga, and Rion make their appearances. All the way back at Monster HQ, or Monster Island HQ, Captain Wakabayashi is delivered a way to free Mechagodzilla from alien control by none other than Akira Takarada! That's right, the man himself, Akira Takarada! You don't get much better than that. After Akira Takarada delivers the memory stick, we get the biggest battle in Godzilla history ever, and we are treated to the titular battle royale between the forces of good kaiju and evil. From here on out, it's pretty much a non-stop kaiju brawl until all the monsters under the evil Space Queen's control, including the newly released Biolant, pull together and kick the ever-loving tar out of Godzilla. With the big guy out for the count, all seems lost until Matt and the X-Rider make a return and the alien control over Mechagodzilla is severed. The fight gets tougher and bloodier until, for reasons I will not spoil, Godzilla turns into Hyper Godzilla, leading way for Braddock to deliver one of the best lines I've ever heard and giving a pretty accurate depiction of how I imagine a lot of monsters getting named in the first place. Hyper Godzilla lives up to the hype, oh I slay me, and starts wrecking the evil monsters like there's no tomorrow. At this point, I think I'll stop here, and this is a good place to stop. If I was to say anything else about the plot, it would totally give away way too much. So to find out what happens next, you gotta wait for the film to be officially released on YouTube on November the 3rd, or stop by the Pickwick Theater in Chicago on the 6th and see the movie in the theaters. That's right, a theatrical viewing of the film will be done. Have to scroll down here, blah, blah, blah. Now we've reached the point in the video for me to give my final thoughts. As a whole, the film is pretty fun and delivers where it needs to. As a Godzilla fan film goes, it's one of the best that I've seen. I mean, if this would have had the budget and marketing of Final Wars, this would probably go down as one of the best G movies ever made. If for no other reason, it delivers the kaiju bashing action promised in Final Wars that we were denied. It's by no means perfect, but I never found anything to complain about. And then again, unlike most critics, I don't have my head shoved up my... Let me put it this way. If you're looking for something wrong, you're going to find it. But if you're willing to just sit back and enjoy the ride, then the ride is quite worth it. For the standout stuff, there's a lot to be taken in. There are many homages to not only past Godzilla films, but also games, TV shows, and other film franchises. For some of the more standout moments, when we see through the Hedorah slug's eyes, field of vision, yeah, we'll go with that. You can hear the helmet readout from the Predator films. Then there's a subtle homage to Zone Fighter in a couple of spots, some cool effect sequences tossed in from Super Godzilla, and even a pretty awesome tip of the hat to Power Rangers villain Rita Repulsa. But let's see, as for the human cast, I'll admit, there were some that I preferred over others. My favorites being Zargile, Braddock, and Yuki for their more comedic dialogue. But I've always been a bit partial to the more humorous characters. Braddock admittedly has some of my favorite dialogue, and Yuki's smart-ass attitude definitely made him stand out. Matt is rather abrasive, par for the course as most male leads tend to be nowadays, but he has the one line that made my family bust out laughing, and that's saying something when you can make my mom laugh that hard. As for the monster stuff, the guy in the Hyper Godzilla costume can't act. That's right, I'm gonna say it. I can't act for crap. As far as the monster cast goes, this has to be the most seen in a Godzilla movie. And that is just plain awesome. Some monsters get far more screen time than others, but with this mini kaiju, that's understandable. I've never been thrown off by the various qualities of the costumes themselves, but more so the acting. Notably, my own. The reason for this is simple. Because I know how much my costumes are capable of, I try to move at a speed that would be appropriate for filming at high speeds, whereas most everyone else moves at a speed more fitting for a large, heavy creature. In most cases, this isn't an issue, as Varan tends to have the most screen time out of any of my suits, and I wanted him to move much quicker than Hyper Godzilla. Since Varan is much slimmer than Hyper G, I wanted his movements to reflect more of a martial artist. His fighting style revolves more around speedy attacks and trickery, whereas Hyper Godzilla was done to move more like a wrecking ball. The one moment where this becomes an issue is during the Varan Gigan fight, where both costumes were shot side by side on a set constructed at G-Fest. Because I'm used to moving fast, and Chris Biowa, who played the part of Gigan, did it to be slower as kaiju tend to move, I had to slow down my movements to match. And let me tell you, I can't act for crap when I slow down my movements. I'm sure that I'm probably the only person that will ever notice this, as the scene is a rather quick one, but it did let me know that I should probably try to practice moving as a monster should, as opposed to how a suit should. My nitpicking at my own acting aside, you should definitely check this film out if you're a fan of giant monster movies or a big fan of the big guy himself. I'm proud to say that I got to work on this film, and I'm eternally grateful to Billy DeBose for allowing me the chance to achieve my lifelong goals. I got to play Godzilla in a movie. I got the opportunity to bring back not only Varan to the big screen, but also my favorite kaiju of them all, Magma. Um, Now that all that is over, um, I do have to apologize to a lot of the cast who worked on this film, as I completely forgot your names. It's I forgot to write down the names, and I was like, okay, watch a credit sequence, remember the names, and then whenever I get around to doing my actual audio, remember the names and just say them. Unfortunately, I couldn't remember, so I deeply apologize for those of you who I forgot to mention. But yes, um, so that was my review for Godzilla Battle Royale. It's this nice little romp of mayhem and destruction with lots of monster fight scenes. I mean, it's basically just one big monster fight scene with some human stuff tossed in here and there. But yeah, again, I highly suggest you check it out whenever it comes out on YouTube. And again, if you're lucky enough to be in Chicago on the 6th of November, you can see the movie for free at the Pickwick Theater. Um, so yeah, I guess I really don't have any idea where to go from here. So I bid you guys farewell, and may God bless.